Welcome to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast, hosted by Alison Humphries. The Recruitment Leadership Podcast is here to help those in the recruitment industry gain awareness and understanding on the hot topics faced by those in the business of hiring people. In each episode, Alison Humphries is joined by a fellow expert to offer professional knowledge, insight and advice on the biggest subjects affecting recruitment businesses. It's the podcast to listen to for recruitment business frontrunners seeking expert information from industry-leading advisors. Welcome to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast.
Hello and welcome to Season 3 of the Recruitment Leadership Podcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm Alison Humphries of Recruitment Leadership, which is a business working with owners and directors of recruitment agencies to help them achieve their aims, whether that's growth or a business event or just working more sanely. I'm delighted to be joined today by Ryan McCabe. Ryan is the CEO of Odro, and for those of our listeners who aren't familiar with the Odro brand, Odro's been a very successful, fast-growing video interviewing platform used by lots of my clients, amongst others. So, Ryan, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Ryan, there's an interesting story behind how Odro's grown and how it became so focused on the recruitment market. Could you just give us a summary of that?
Yeah, sure. So most people think I started Odro, but I didn't. Didn't actually found the business. So my business partner, Bill Schooler, founded the company. To go back to where I met Bill whilst I was running a recruitment agency. We weren't doing very well. We were one of the agencies that everyone now hates. I just didn't know that at the time. It was throw enough mud at the wall, make sure something sticks. And I didn't really know any better. I'd never worked for a big firm. I'd never been through the kind of serious training, but we were making money, and that's what mattered when you're 21. So as we kind of, as I was introduced to Bill by a few common connections, and Bill had started this software that was for resolving disputes online. So most people don't know that Odro isn't just a made up word, it stands for Online Dispute Resolution Organisation.
Right. So we're talking, what, legal disputes?
Yeah, so legal disputes. So my business partner Bill was the chief executive of a solicitor's property centre. He took it from 8 to 130 staff, something like that. Very successful, well known across the kind of Scotland Central Belt, a very well known brand. 2008 hit, property market took the hit, and there was some kind of interesting legal battles that went on. But Bill, having a real keen interest in technology, and he aligned a lot of his successes through in punching above their weight to technology. So he said, I'm going to start a technology business, but I want to focus it on resolving disputes online so no one goes through what I just went through in terms of legal battles. Okay. So he formed Odro for the Online Dispute Resolution Organisation, and he found a guy on Google to build a system on Concrete 5 called Mark down in Norwich. So they met, they worked together for a year or so, and they built this system, this huge system that could, had cases and case notes and chats and live, conversations and all that sort of stuff, and it had video in it. And I had met Bill, as I say, through a couple of common connections that said, look, you need to speak to Bill. I had voiced that I was really struggling in recruitment. I hadn't really found my way. We were kind of very, very hand to mouth, feast or famine, perm recruitment business trying to get off the ground. We all know what it's like. And when I met Bill, he showed me this system, and a lot of it was just, I didn't really agree with a lot of it, but then he said, and this is the video, and you click this link and you're online. And I was like, you didn't download anything. This was 5 years ago, so I was like, you didn't download anything, there was no password, you just clicked it and it was on. He's like, yeah. And at the moment, the only other alternative was like Skype or GoToMeeting, and it was so cumbersome to get online. And I was like, wait a minute, this is the Skype killer, let me see it. And he said, yeah, and you just press that button to record. And I was like, whoa, you can record? Hold on a minute, I could use this. I could use this in recruitment from agency. So I spent a bit of time getting to know Bill, and he was just a really salt-of-the-earth guy that just had genuine goals, real morals and values, and I thought I could really work with this guy. What people don't know is Bill was 61, 62 at that time. Says this, 25, 26-year-old young guy, hungry sales guy. You just wouldn't put the two of us in the room. So anyway, Bill and I had a meeting, and actually one of the things I said was, wait a minute, not only could I use it, I could sell it. And I could really enjoy selling this and trying to find our way. So I asked Bill to meet with this subcontractor, Mark, that he'd met online and built the system, and kind of that way, and we cut a long story short, agreed to start again, split the company 3 ways. I would give up everything I had going, and I'll sell it. And that was pretty much the beginning of it. And we jumped in video conferencing, and we thought we were going to beat Skype and all that sort of stuff. But the more that we kind of explored the market, the more we found that recruitment was missing something like this. Video had been about for so long that we just felt that the best use for this was in recruitment after all. So we just doubled down, got rid of everything else that we were doing, and said we can make this the best experience possible for clients, candidates, consultants, and make it specifically for agencies.
Okay, great. So, they're circling back into recruitment eventually. And it's good to know that you understand what people in recruitment agencies are actually trying to do before introducing additional technology. So, video interviewing in all its forms, which we should probably identify just in case for those of our listeners who aren't so aware, has risen quite sharply in the last few years, even though the technology's been around for a long time. Yeah. So what do you put that down to? Why is it suddenly becoming so much more important in the industry?
So I think there's a few factors. It's not just about innovative companies and we're all really trying really hard and we've come up with this secret sauce now to make it work. There's a lot of things that weren't ready about the market and even infrastructure at the time. Mobile phones, everyone now has a smartphone. 10 years ago they didn't, and as much as video interviewing was around then, the ability to get online and actually complete the video interview was way harder than doing it on the phone or going face to face. And what I've learned is until it becomes easy, the new way is easier or much, much more beneficial, it is not going to change. So I believe that infrastructure's played a big part. Smartphones, 4G, all that sort of stuff has now made it a lot more accessible. But also workflow has been a huge way for the new guys like us to come up and take a big market share. So the old way was maybe 25, 30 steps to get online, and the new guys are it's 3 for a candidate to get online. So I think that's a big thing for us how we've got there. But the education around the benefits to the client of using video, the benefits to the candidate of using video, which is very important and very often overlooked, and also the benefits in the agency world for a consultant to use video. And until those 3 align, it doesn't work.
So let's come back to exactly how it benefits clients and candidates and consultants in a moment. Just want to talk about the key different forms of video interviewing. So clearly there's live video into where you put your client and your candidate together, and let them get on with it, if you like. Do you just want to summarise how else people are using the platform?
Sure. So you have, as you say, live video interviewing. In a very basic way, you can describe that as like recording a Skype call between the agency recruiter and the candidate. The purposes of recording that is then sending it to the client, so they get the benefit of watching a 5 to 7 minute highlight of the interview to make sure they're worthwhile meeting face to face. So the first version is the recruiter interviewing the candidate on a live call. The second is the client interviewing the candidate on a live call, which is facilitated by the recruiter, and again that can be recorded for the recruiter's records if that's helped. But you also have one-way or asynchronous video interviewing, which is typing questions. The recruiter would type questions into the system, and then you would send those questions to the candidate, and Odro it's a link. They click the link, and the questions appear on screen, and they record those video answers as they appear. So no consultant or client needs to be present.
Okay, and that's interesting because it's part of a general move that I've observed now to try and structure interviews better, to rely less on, and it's by no means over, but to rely less on CVs and more on actual bespoke questions for the role in question. and empirical evidence, so things like aptitude tests.
Absolutely.
To remove that sort of unconscious bias that is there in so many recruitment exercises. One question that a lot of people raise about video interviewing, though, is user acceptability from the candidate point of view. So if you are a recruiter, and most of them are ones who work in candidate short markets, very often there's a feeling that, oh gosh, if I put another hurdle to jump in the way of my candidates, then I'm just going to be making my own life harder and reducing the candidate pool. So what are your thoughts on user acceptability from a candidate point of view?
So if I can just very quickly circle back to, we call it 3C, and I'm sure every recruiter's heard of the 3Cs, and everyone's got their own methodology for 3Cs, but the client, the candidate and the consultant, they all need to be bought in. So we have a statistic that we've gathered from our own data that shows clients, if they take a video interview from an Odro, so they take an Odro video and it progresses to a face-to-face, 70% of the time they're deemed hireable by the client. If the role is there, they get it 70% of the time.
So that's 70?
70, right?
Wow.
Now that is following the methodology of giving the recruiter your first stage interview questions. They ask them in a video interview, they submit that back to the client, and the client, 7 out of 10, will place those because they've found out most of what they want to know in the first stage interview questions. So what we recommend you do is take that statistic to the candidate. If it's a candidate short market, there is a queue at the door of recruiters trying to get that candidate on, but we can now say to them, every other agency is going to throw you in face-to-face interviews because you're such a powerful candidate. You're going to get interviews coming out your ears. What we'll do for you, your time is very precious. What we'll do for you is make sure that you do this video, and I'm only going to ask you to leave the house if I'm 70% sure you're going to get the job. It's got to be positioned the right way for the candidates. You've got the saving time aspect. If they are a passive candidate, all they're going to ask to do is describe the most recent project 17 times to every other agency and every other client. And I think that you've got to remember there are benefits to this. It has to be pitched the right way to the candidates to make sure that you're solving their pain, not just your clients. And that 70% stat alone, I mean, there's another 9 or 10 that we go through in training, but that 70% stat alone makes it worth the candidates while.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course there's the whole issue about taking time off work and travel and preserving a candidate's confidentiality.
That's it, yeah.
That all plays into the acceptability to the candidate. But I do still encounter some of my clients, recruitment business owners, who say, maybe in other markets, not my market.
That's the most common.
So, back at the turn of the century, it was, that'll be fine for graduate recruitment.
You still get some of that.
All those people spend all their time on social media, they'll be fine, but not for engineers.
Yeah.
So have you seen a shift in attitude, or do you think it's just, if it's widespread, everybody gets on with it? Yeah,
I mean, we've seen a shift, but I think it's bias of me to talk about us seeing the shift. Gartner released a study earlier this year, I think. I'll come back on dates, but 84% of candidates across all markets, 84% of candidates expect video to be part of the hiring process.
Wow.
That's Gartner, that's not us.
I
So,
wasn't familiar with that.
84% expect video.
Okay.
So it's the market has shifted.
Yeah.
I think there are times, we talked about the different, we call them flavours of video. I think there's a different time and place for each flavour. If you have a passive candidate, you've not really invested much time getting to know them, and you send them a link to answer questions on a video without articulating any benefits, yes, you're right, they will go to the guy who doesn't ask them to do any extra steps. But if you're investing some time in them, finding out more about them, if this role really is right for them, and then saying, look, I've been given the first stage interview questions by the client. If we can record 5 or 7 minutes of this, I can send it over to them, and you're only going to leave the house if I'm 70% sure you're getting this. Your pitch is different than any other recruiter. I think people forget how important it is to stand out to the candidate rather than standing out just to the client.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Fascinating statistic there. Yeah. So of that 84% that expect video to be part of the process, are we looking across all sectors, levels, seniority? Do you know what the sample was?
So I don't know for sure. I do know that it was a very generic sample, though. I can't tell you the split of that. Yeah. But Yeah, I mean, I'll find the link and reference it for the listeners.
That would be really helpful, thanks. Okay, so let's go back to the other two of the 3 Cs. The better outcomes for candidates and for consultants is key. So I work with a lot of businesses who have invested money in new tech, all the bells and whistles, and they roll their eyes when you talk to them about video interviewing, because it's, and you've probably heard this, we did that and it was all very exciting, but it didn't make any difference to my business in the long run. So what I'd like to talk about now is how to implement into video interviewing as part of your overall service, so that it actually gets better outcomes for your candidates and therefore for the consultants, rather than being a novelty that costs you a lot of downtime and doesn't take you anywhere. So one of the things that we've spoken about before is how recruiters can often regard these new, any technological advance as an add-on, and that's sometimes reflected, to my mind, unfortunately, in the way they price it. So they say, okay, well, we're charging X% for our core service, or you can have this service at X% plus 2% extra. And I don't know any clients that willingly pay the 2% extra. They say, well, it's clearly a frill.
That's it. Everyone don't need.
So I think looking at pricing structure is something we should talk about, and I'd like to hear what, from your point of view, has worked and not worked amongst your clients.
Okay, so there's a few facets to that I'll try and cover. The first one was talking about taking it on as a frill. So that we go, most of the time people use this as you're right, as a bolt-on, and they used to charge more money for it. And it's a very difficult sell to get them to buy into that, because then they completely attach a pounds and pence sign to something you're doing for them. And if they disagree that they want to spend that on saving X, then you've lost it. So we recommend that you productize what you do, which is something we've been kind of evangelising over for well over 18 months now, just because I've seen so much success of the clients that did that off their own back. So the way that we would pitch it, the way we recommend to pitch it, I'll just go through that. It's easy for me to rhyme that off. As we recommend that everyone has 3 products. In an agency, you have 3 products. Now this was born from the idea that only recruiters that have been in the industry for 10 years can sell retained business. The holy grail was everyone working retained business, paid up front, not against anyone else. I've got a little bit more time to produce the quality. But the problem was, if you'd been in less than 10 years, you couldn't sell it for some reason. Now, we drilled down for a long time to find out why that was, and the crux of it was that most consultants didn't believe that what they offered was better than what their competitor offered. They thought they all do the same thing, so why would they pay me any differently or any more or in a retained model, because I'm doing the same thing. And that there was the point we had to fix before we sprinkled video on it or anything else. So you have to firstly sit down and say, okay, not 10 years consultant, but graduate just in the door, 9 months in recruitment or 2 years in recruitment. Why are we better than X competitor? And you need to have a very succinct and clear answer to that. And once you have that answer and you work average 18% fees on a contingent model, that is what you do. You go to the market, you'll find candidates, you'll telephone interview them, possibly meet them, take loads of notes, submit that back in a CV pack to the client over email. That's what you do, and don't worry, Mr. Client, you don't pay me unless I find the right guy. That's what they do day in, day out. What we then recommend that you do is have different products so that upsells and downsells are very easy to distinguish between. So we have a recruiter in said, yes, I'm going to go to the market, it's 18%, you don't pay me till you get the guy, and I'll go to the market, find 5 candidates, I'll interview them, I'll do a telephone interview, I'll keep all the notes and submit that to you. Or for the exact same price, I'll do all of that, plus I will take your first stage interview questions. I will ask those candidates your questions in an unedited recorded video interview between 5 and 7 minutes long, and I'll send that back to you so you can share this internally and make sure that you make the right decisions on who to spend your valuable time on face to face. We don't even charge you any more for this service, Mr. Client. It's the exact same price as our contingent offering. We just ask for some commitment up front of £500 deposit to make sure we can give you all this free stuff. Now, immediately the client isn't doing any more work, but they're getting a much more committed client. You're getting exclusivity over the role, you're getting a deposit on there, all the benefits that come with a retained role without the difficult third sale, and you're not charging any more for video. So if this client is committed to hiring that role, why would they go for the cheaper contingent offering, pip you up against other people? Why wouldn't they see the value in having that recording and only interviewing the
So
good ones?
in that product, if you will, we've got some clearly visible evidence, and that's one of the issues that recruiters have, is that they have no shop window. There's nothing visible about their product. But this really helps. That we've got that evidence that the first stage interview, if you will, has effectively been carried out on the client's behalf. So I can see that totally condenses the time to fill from the client's point of view. Is there anything about the nature of the video itself that gives clients a better quality hire, do you think?
Yes, so I don't know the stats on this. This is very much a surveying process that we're running just now, but on quality of hire, which is quite an important metric that's just coming out now, quality of hire, a lot of hiring managers put it down to the interview process. That's why we hired the wrong person, because the interview process either wasn't thorough enough or we relied on second-hand information. So we tick a box to say Jessica interviewed him and said he was good at this, so I don't need to check that. The next is culture, and I'm going to agree that he'll fit in the culture. But Jessica might disagree with me. And the fact is, we couldn't hear it straight from the horse's mouth, so we have to just rely on each other, and that can impact quality of hire. That might, Jessica got it wrong. But if we had a video to look back on, everyone could see the exact same thing and make judgments and discuss them without having to rely on that.
And that in itself is a very fruitful conversation for many clients. So they don't, all the decision makers in that process very often haven't discussed, well, what do we mean by good communication skills?
Yeah.
One person's writing down great at punctuation and another person saying, charismatic public speaker. And at no point have the two of them got together and agreed what the behaviours are they're looking for. So
what good looks like is what most people are coining that as. What does good look like to you? And it's very easy. Most people agree the job brief at the start, but then they don't agree. Like, there's very loose terms in there. Like you're talking about, are they confident? Yeah. I don't know. You might say someone's confident, and I might say I don't actually think they're that confident. Yeah. So it's very, very fluffy.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Obviously, the video process where we're using a recorded interview doesn't, in itself, allow a candidate to have a look at the potential workplace. Have you got any experience of this system being used that way?
Yes, so but not necessarily the typical way of, this is where you're going to sit and this is, all that sort of stuff. The best way we've seen this being used, because bear in mind it's used, we still do face-to-face. We'll never replace that, and you want to save some stuff for face-to-face because there's benefit in that. One of the best ways we've seen it used is the recruiter interviewing the hiring manager, recording that conversation and asking questions like, what's it like to work there? Why are you looking for a graduate? Why is that degree so important? Because it's a rare thing to ask for. Really, specific questions to this role, and then use that video to engage passive candidates, but also to show before a face-to-face interview, this is the girl you're going to be working for. This is the guy you're going to be working for. That's a good indicator on whether or not they're committed to the role. They feel quite bought into that person. It's a very good way of gauging.
Yeah, and let's face it, that's what's going on in most first interviews, isn't it? Face to face, when a client and a candidate first get together in the traditional process.
Yeah, it's, do I like you?
Exactly. Yeah. And very little actual structured screening goes on in that interview, doesn't it?
But and again, because we're talking about it being fluffy, that's very easy to waste a lot of time in that stage. It's very easy to sit down and say, actually, the CV looked great, but I don't like you. I don't think you'll get on. I think you'll rub her up the wrong way, and we can't have that. So I think it's a very important and very easy to save time at that stage.
So actually, that takes us quite neatly to another issue that people have mentioned to me, they say that they are concerned that their clients will have a diversity and inclusivity issue about using video.
Yeah.
Now, this is a little bit illogical in my head because otherwise they're going to meet someone face to face on the interview. Have you had any issues, and has anybody raised that as an issue?
Over the years, we struggled with that at the start. If I'm really honest, they're saying, well, if we put someone in that doesn't fit our, tick our box at the very start, we've already shown our cards, we're sending anonymised CVs, now you're sending a video that undoes all that work. We're bringing that to the forefront, and it was quite difficult for us to really see how we can support diversity and inclusion, because we're actually big advocates of it as a company ourselves in terms of hiring, and being a very inclusive business. So we, for us personally, the only way we could combat that was to ensure that we put heat maps on the videos. So when we send a video over, we are now one of the only systems that can actually make sure every candidate gets a fair shot at this process. So for example, we can see if a client switches off after 5 seconds. And all they've been able to see is their race or their sex or whatever it is. And compared to everyone else, we can actually say, well, hold on a minute, of the 6 candidates, you only watch the men. Why was that? We can be very creative in how we present that to the client, but if you're dealing with blue chip clients, one of the things we've had very good responses on is they become one of the only agencies with diversity and inclusion at the forefront of the process. Yes, we anonymise CVs. Yes, we do all the things that we already do, but we can also make sure that when we send that person, we put that person's visually in front of someone. We can also measure how fair a shot that they got compared to everyone else, which you can't do in face-to-face.
Okay, so just tell us a little bit more about these heat maps. So I'm not sure what our listeners will completely understand how they would be used.
So, from our side, then we'll give an example. We have 3 candidates that we send on an Odro shortlist, which shows the 3 videos straight away. And when the client reviews those videos, we then log into Odro and we can see the heat maps on what the candidate's viewing habits were. So we can see that Sarah, the first 3.5 minutes of Sarah's interview are watched 8 times, and that part of the interview goes red on the graph. But then they maybe switched off after 3.5 minutes and left the rest of the interview, and that's yellow. So we know there that they switched off, and we want to know why, so we can go back and review that and try and guess before we've spoken to the client why that was. We've also got, percentage completed in full. So we've got, 3 candidates there. 2 of them were watched in full, 1 of them wasn't. The way that most recruiters use that is, let's say, for example, in a real life scenario, we send a developer over, and we send 3 developers over. 1 of them doesn't present themselves very well, quite scruffy, that sort of stuff. But they are a really good candidate, and as the recruiter, we've spent the time, we've interviewed them, we've met them, recorded a video, all that stuff. And the client watches the video and 10 seconds in goes, oh, I'm not having that guy in the office. Off. Right now, if that's a CV, you have no control. They just say no, and they'll find a way. Now that you've got this statistics, you can say, well, hold on a minute, I can see they only watched it for 5 seconds. So you go back and say, Mr. Client, I know Stephen didn't present himself very well at the start, but he has a very, very powerful answer to that 4th question. Would you mind watching that 4th question again for me? And let me know what you think of that, because it's going to really help me in my future search rather than me wasting your time. And that gets the guy back at the forefront, and if he is as good as you say, you're going to get that interview.
Okay, that's a really practical way of helping people around sometimes clients' unconscious bias, actually, because it's a hard deal to call them out on it, isn't it? So a little while back, I remember you saying in a talk, remember this, your clients have KPIs themselves, and headcount ain't one of them, which right. I thought was really neatly put. So very often, less experienced recruiters that I meet, they're talking about recruitment as if it was a desirable product or service in itself, whereas actually for most clients it's a distress purchase situation. Or certainly, at best, it's designed to achieve some other purpose, not just to fill a seat in the office. So have you seen people actually relate video interviewing directly to client KPIs in any way? Or can you imagine how they could do that?
So let me give an example. I am an engineering manager, and I'm looking for a an engineer to work the machines to build the parts. Now that creates a recruitment need. Can't find them myself, I go to the agency, and the agency says, okay, you need this engineer to build these parts. Why? Because we've got this big job on with an aerospace company. All right, okay, when do you need them in? Yesterday, as they all say. Right, okay, fine, so time's really important to you. Okay, fine. I think to speed this process up and get these parts delivered to your client as quickly as we can, we should make sure that we get these answers and candidates back straight away. What we'll do for you is we'll take your first stage interview questions and get that step out the way for you so we can make sure that guy's working that machine as soon as we possibly can. That's probably, on the spot here, it's probably is how we relate the pain of the recruiters actually to cut that time down and get them into that seat faster. But the reason they're doing that is because they have this aerospace client they need to get the parts for. And I think if I was back in my recruiter days, I would be building the pain of why those parts need to be built for that agency, not why you need to tick this box of having a guy in a seat.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, so that's a really good example, and I couldn't agree more strongly with your point about understand the pain point. Why does this person need to fill a job? Yeah. Not for its own sake, but what is it there to achieve? Because then, obviously, you can always relate the benefits of video interviewing to it. And I've certainly come across a number, particularly of enterprise clients now, who have diversity as a KPI, and bizarrely have interpreted it in a very blunt way, like, I'll get paid a bonus for every woman I hire.
Oh, that happened. I've seen that before,
we've had examples of that. So actually being able to use a structured process is really important, I think, in making sure that people are objective rather than subjective and reliant on CVs.
Yeah, I think measurable is the thing. I think I would probably push on to that, because diversity, it's what's the word I'm looking for here? It defeats the purpose if you start saying, okay, I want 9 women and 11 males. It defeats the purpose of diversity. It's not about the hard numbers, therefore it's very difficult to measure. But at least from what we're trying to do, at least if we can make sure everyone gets a fair crack, and whoever got the job got it on merit, not on their skin colour or their sex or their religion or anything like that. That's what diversity to me is all about. It's not about we need more women or we need more men. It's about who's the best for the job and why, and make sure that women, men, everything else get the same shot at the job.
Right, and that is assessed though by their ability in, actually in interview and behaviourally, rather than their CV history. Yeah. So I've found myself saying this a lot recently. We are in the business of finding candidates for our clients, not purveying CVs. And I found the language that an awful lot of recruiters use, by default is, yes, Mr. Client, Miss Client, I will go get you some CVs.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Instead of presenting candidates.
Yeah.
And where that goes back to is that very often, unfortunately, they have nothing to say about that candidate beyond what's on their CV.
Yeah. Very good
reading a CV out over the telephone to a client doesn't add a great deal of value.
Part of that. One of the things I just wanted to cover on that is when people say that, unfortunately, I believe the contingent payment model has driven such competition, and so I get why contingent payment models were there. It was very safe for a client to say, look, it's a big fee. I'm not sure I want to pay that right now because I'm not sure you can find the person I'm looking for. I'll pay if you get them. And you know what? That's actually fine if you're the only person doing it. The problem arises when you throw 5 other agencies in that pot and you then all have to fight against each other. And if you're putting 5 agencies in the pot for one role, 4 agencies aren't getting paid for 6 weeks' work. I just think it's unethical. But when you talk about CV selling, the contingent payment model has driven down quality, which means all they can afford to do is sell you CVs and just find a CV, read it out over the phone and give you it. And that, in essence, that's where this whole mission came from, of we need to stop doing that. We need to start being paid, and you can't be paid for selling CVs. People think you win a retainer from selling a CV. You're wrong. But if your client is watching back a video of your recruiter interviewing the candidate, and one of the questions is showing the guy that's not techie, that owns a tech company, but let's say one of the questions to the developer is, so what do you think of the JavaScript framework? And the recruiter asks the question, the candidate goes, yeah, it's good. And the recruiter goes, I'm sorry, could you elaborate a bit more on that for the client, please? When the client watches that back, they go, yes, That's a recruiter recruiting for me, screening out people, not wasting my time, not selling me CVs. He's doing his job or she's doing her job. And that means so much more to a client in terms of value, which means when that next job comes up, they're not going to go, yeah, but that big guy's doing it for 12%. Because they don't want to buy CVs anymore. You've shown them the light, you've shown them what a recruiter should do. And that's where you start getting longevity with your clients. And that's another benefit of using video. Sorry, I go on.
No, that's great stuff. Okay, so let's talk practical. I work with lots of companies who want to differentiate themselves in what's, let's face it, in the UK, is a very crowded market.
Yes.
And so they will make an investment in something like Odro or some other tech or methodology. Doesn't really matter what it is. And then it doesn't transform the business. So let's talk very practically about implementation, because we are an industry that's full of great ideas, not terribly good at implementation.
Again, it was something over the years we had to find our way, because we had, in the early days, poor implementations, sold it, the tech works, so move on. We had to take it on our shoulders to make sure people used it and used it the right way. And the biggest lesson we learned over the years, which we use now today, every day, when we say, okay, you've purchased it, what is your success criteria? What does this need to have produced in 3 months, in 6 months, in 12 months for you to class this as a success? And if they don't know, they can't buy it. If they're, I've seen video is the next thing, so we just need to get video. Wrong answer. It won't work. You will not renew with us. And we need to understand a bit more. The benefit might be that, your fill rate's 1 in 4 because all your jobs are contingent. Okay, we should be changing that fill rate to 3 and 4, or at least 50%. Let's change the turn the dial on that a little bit, and let's talk about winning jobs that we can sprinkle some added value on and start winning some retained. So that the problem has to be solved with video or any other tech. So I think that when you're buying technology or methodology, or you're making an investment in your business, understand what the success criteria is and what the pounds and pence attached to that success criteria are. For us, it's okay, we want to win another 10 retainers in 3 months. Okay, how much your average fee? 7 grand. 70 grand in 3 months? Yes, sir. No problem. We have a direct measurable. And that's how we know the client will be happy with what we do. But without that, when we tried to implement, it didn't work, because we would get these wins and then go, yeah, that's great. Oh, I want more. Of course you want more. Of course you want more. I want more. But that was where we started to struggle. So the first thing was to make sure the success criteria is there, and then put the staff behind it correctly. So for example, if your success criteria is to win 10 retainers, and you put, okay, we're just going to try it, and you pick 5 guys that are, already, you've not removed any work from their plate, you've put something else on their plate and said, by the way, make this work, because if you guys make it work, I'm going to roll it out to everyone. Well, hold on a minute, that's a half-hearted attempt at trying to get something properly committed. If you're not ready to buy it, don't buy it. Set the success criteria, put the right people behind it, and commit to a period of time to roll it out properly. Accept that nothing sticks first time, and make sure that if something goes wrong, you have a way to mitigate it, which is something we built pretty well, I think, actually, in the last, maybe a year ago. We built this new implementation plan to solve that problem. Make sure that, okay, what happens if this happens? What happens if this goes really well but that one doesn't? How do we share success stories? How do we share problems that we've then solved? So we've got WhatsApp groups. So okay, we've committed to the company, 250 staff, rolling this out everywhere. Great. We create pods. We have a pod of 30, they're in a WhatsApp group. Pod of 20, they're in a WhatsApp group. And for Odro, it's live by the sword, die by the sword. It's okay. If there's a problem, it goes in that group chat. If there's a success, it goes in that group chat. And that way we can get this tribal mentality of everyone's behind it, and the people who don't think it'll work see someone else making a success of it. Okay, well, it must work, give it a go.
Yeah, and alongside that, the actual training support for people to incorporate it into their sales pitch, actually integrate it rather than it being that add-on, is critical, isn't it? I've seen tens of thousands of pounds wasted with very expensive CRM switchovers. This is a good example.
Yeah.
And the CRM companies provide support to the extent of, here's a video of how you perform the key functions on our
Yeah.
CRM.
That's
And actually the piece
yeah.
of work that hasn't been done is the business discussing how are we going to use these codes, what are the processes that we want to drive through our new CRM. And that's time consuming, but it's critical as by way of investment, isn't it?
So talking about CRM, for example, one of the things that really helps with, it's not directly in the implementation, but what really helps is bring in someone who uses a CRM day in, day out, not you. So for me, we're just moving over to Salesforce, and for us, I had to get the guys who input the data to do the demo, to put our data in the demo, look at it and say, does this feel good? Will you use this? If you won't use it, tell me now, because I'm going to invest a lot of money in this, and it's you and your team that's going to use it, but not managers, not directors, not all that, because whether we like it or not, we are detached from the day-to-day working. So something that really helps implementation is before you buy it, make sure the people who are going to use it day-to-day have seen it and agree that this is going to be a benefit to them.
What do you think about making it a KPI to use or sell the new service?
I like it because it depends how committed the business is to change. However, for example, I'm sorry, I relate this back to Odro, but it's just because it's all I know. So when I'm talking about this KPI, for example, we send sales videos out. So instead of a cold call, you'd send a personalised video. But if you're adding a KPI, you need to take something away. So don't say make 100 calls and now do 25 videos. Say no, make 75 calls now and replace those with 25 videos. And then it's Odro or any other CRM's job to say, by doing it this way, it's our job to make sure you feel comfortable and you see the benefits in making that change. So I agree with it, but I think if you're adding something, you need to take something away because your team's already busy.
It's a good point, yeah.
So what's your thoughts on a practical implementation, what a successful implementation looks like?
So I absolutely agree with you about having a clear view of what the business issue is we're trying to solve here. So you gave the example of increasing your fill rate, I think, and it might be that for other recruitment businesses it's about taking them into a more senior market, or it might be that they actually want to increase their average fee percentage, something along those lines. But that's a really important starting point, communicating that to the whole business. And then I think essential is supportive training. So it's actually harder with more experienced people. So, they generate good revenue, they're probably earning a good whack, and they're they're on a treadmill where they rehearse the same conversations, use the same phrases to win business.
For 10 years, it's easy to revert to type.
Exactly, yeah. So it's harder to change established people's modus operandi than it is to give new people a brand new whole product, if you will. So that training needs to, it's not a one-hit wonder, is it? It needs to be ongoing, refresher. And I think a couple of things you can add to that, depending on what you're introducing. One is, we already mentioned, making it a KPI, as long as we're not overcrowding them with just more work, quote unquote. Second, visual prompts to remind people, things in their eye line that will remind them of, for example, key statistics. The statistic you quoted earlier, about 84% of candidates now expect video to be part of the process. If that was in my eye line while I'm talking to a client, I'm much more likely to use it. Yeah. Repeat. Always a good message for recruitment business owners. If I had £1 for every owner that said to me, I don't understand it, I've told them, why aren't they doing it? So keep repeating, use stats and backup information, consider creating a new KPI, but above all, train people. Reinforce, change is hard, particularly when you've got to keep a revenue stream going all the time. And it's up to managers to make sure that whatever you've taught people in a training session about that new product, initiative, service is actually implemented at the desk. So let's just move beyond video interviewing now, partly driven by the very competitive nature of the UK recruitment industry, but let's face it, it's competitive everywhere. video interviewing is part of, for some businesses, it's part of differentiating their offering. Yeah. And selling that successfully isn't about, I've got this, it is about, here's a way we can help you, Mr. Client, meet your objectives better. Blue sky thinking now, how do you see the recruitment industry market requirements developing over, let's say, the next 5 years? Let's leave aside all the known unknowns of Brexit and so forth.
Okay. I think everyone jumps on the bandwagon of tech, right? And as a tech recruitment technology business owner, I should jump up and down and say tech's going to change the industry and everyone needs to be on tech. That's a given, right? People know that technology makes jobs easier or adds value here and there, and automation's everywhere now, right? Chatbots, AI, all that sort of stuff. And yes, that will play a part. But I think going back to basics, as counterintuitive as this sounds, I think going back to basics and starting again for recruiters to become more valuable to clients and candidates in non-traditional ways is the way I see the industry going, because they have no other option. So, for example, we're saying productize. Go back to basics, understand why you're different, find ways to be more valuable. You might want to say that you're more valuable because you save them time. Fine. You might also say you're more valuable because you build an employer brand and build a talent pipeline, all these things that are coming out. I think you need to get creative with where you add value from a personal point of view. So creating new methodologies and investing in your people rather than the technology that powers your people is going to become more and more important. If you are spending... I don't really know how I would ratio this, but between technology and training, constant training. The best businesses I've worked for and worked with Odro are constantly training their teams, constantly learning new things, and the people who are buying Odro and are relying on Odro to make them better are the ones that don't train their team. And then they go, why are you getting beat by this company around the corner? And I know the answer. It's because that guy or girl on the other side of the fence is constantly learning, hungry to get better, understands the client more, is immersed in the candidate market, knows their specialism and can fight on that. So I think where the market's going, everyone will get much, much more targeted in what they recruit. So they'll become niche market specialists, but true niche market specialists with candidates. And I believe everyone will be forced to go down the technology route, but the ones that are going to come out top are the ones that invest in their people just as much.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we'll also see, and it's not going to be an overnight shift by any means, but I think we're already beginning to see a shift away from using CVs as the sole tool for recruitment, looking for more objective methods of assessing candidates for a particular job.
So I've got quite a strong view that CVs won't, in my lifetime, I don't think this CV or the idea of a CV will be replaced, because the advancement of technology is the ability to screen the CV, right? It's there now. Screen the CV and only bring the CVs that you like the look of, and then progress them to a video for us or a face-to-face, whatever, that's fine. The next step is where I see it being a bit further away, where we could switch on AI tomorrow on video. There's companies out there, we don't even need to build it. There's companies out there we can plug into now who have got an integration that we can say, now we analyse all the micro expressions in the faces of your candidates. The problem is, we are still, at least in my view, 10 years away from trusting that. And because I have to work with this person every day, I'm not going to trust the computer picked the guy that I like over the girl that I didn't. In 10 years, I'm not going to trust that. So as much as it will play a part, it won't make the decision. And it's the same way with video interviewing, over telephone interviewing, until it becomes easier or much more valuable, I'm not going to switch. So for me, I think AI will play its part, for example, but CVs will be screened automatically, narrowed down to a shortlist. It will then progress to a video, but the AI and the measurement of the facial expressions and everything probably won't be trusted for at least another 10 years. And then it will start to cut that process down even more.
I wonder if, in fact, CVs will only be brought in at the later stages of the process, and we'll start looking more at behaviours and how people answer screening questions for a job at an earlier stage.
Do you have the would you have the CV as part of the application process, but like the human doesn't look at that, or you just
Well,
wouldn't have it?
I think ultimately, probably we could be in a position where we're talking probably beyond my retirement date anyway, before that happens. Okay. Ryan, it's been fascinating talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. At the beginning of this broadcast, Ryan said he thought that our listeners might need subtitles. I hope that hasn't been the case.
Always spoken slowly.
Very interesting talking to you. Ryan's the CEO of Odro. Thanks for joining us. And for our listeners, this has been the Recruitment Leadership Podcast, Season 3. I'm Alison Humphries, and thanks for being with us.
You've been listening to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, review and share so that others can find the podcast too. We really appreciate your support. If you have any questions about the topics covered or wish to find out more about recruitment leadership, please email alison@recruitmentleadership.co.uk, referencing the podcast. We're also on LinkedIn, where you can follow Recruitment Leadership and connect with Alison Humphries. Thank you for listening, and we hope you join us next time for another episode of the Recruitment Leadership Podcast.